The first sound is not thunder, but a breath, as if the world itself remembers how to inhale. A hush gathers over valleys and crowded streets and empty rooms. A hush so complete that even the clocks forget their duty. In that silence, a voice like dawn touches the edges of the human heart and says, "I am here. You do not see me because the smoke is thick and your windows face the wrong horizon. But I am here. Lift your eyes. Remember how to listen." A child hears it first, not with ears, but with wonder. Her palms still hold the warmth of a candle just blown out, and in that tender heat, she thinks, "Someone has called my name." In another city, an old man folds yesterday's newspaper and sets it aside like an unneeded shield, sensing the same call. In the desert, a shepherd traces a circle in the dust, thin as a prayer. In the sea, waves that have hammered the cliffs for centuries pause for a heartbeat, and the foam looks like lace on the garment of the world. The sky darkens, and not because of storm. Darkness arrives like a teacher, carrying a book wrapped in thunder. People look up from their glowing screens and find that their faces are lit by something older than light. A rumor crosses the earth with the speed of birds. A day is coming that will feel like a door. Some will say the door is closing. Others will say it is opening. The voice only says, "Prepare your heart to be wide." You ask when, and time smiles with too many teeth. You ask how, and causality takes off its shoes and walks barefoot across your questions. Prophecy does not answer like a schedule, because love does not love like a calendar. Yet signs rise like lanterns on a river, and each lantern carries a story, old as dust and fresh as breath. A woman on a night train dreams of two moons, one silver, one red. Between them hangs a scale, and the scale is singing. Its song feels like hunger and justice braided together. When she wakes, the car is full of sleeping strangers, and yet it is as if they have all agreed to the same vow. She looks at the window and sees her own reflection weeping, though her face is dry. Behind the glass, the night has the expression of a verdict softened by mercy. Elsewhere, a city rises and glows with feverish pride. The towers reach for the sun and forget that light is a gift, not prey. Markets roar. Algorithms hum the lullabies of power. People speak in quantifiable dreams. At noon, pigeons wheel above the river in a sudden, coordinated circle, forming the shape of an eye. No one notices but a janitor on his break and a child skipping school. The janitor thinks of the day he forgave his brother. The child wonders if the sky knows her name. Beneath the streets, a labyrinth of cables hums like a hive. A spark, tiny and anonymous, remembers being a star. It travels along copper veins, leaving behind small awakenings. A nurse who holds a stranger's hand, a judge who bends toward kindness, a thief who returns what he stole and adds a note. Where did this tenderness come from? They ask themselves. From what unseen dawn did it spill? You expect the end to be a hammer. You expect a trumpet to shatter every glass and stern angels to read your ledger aloud. But the mystery arrives like dew, and dew does not argue. It simply collects on what is most ordinary: fence posts, mailbox flags, the backs of snails, and turns them into altars. Night recedes, not because it is defeated, but because it is fulfilled. Some darkness exists only to show how much a candle can do. Still, the earth groans. Far away, forests crackle under suns that stare too long without blinking. Ice remembers rivers that once ran like psalms and now lies silent, thinking of the word return. Storms do arise, not tantrums, but testimonies. They do not say, "See how I destroy." They say, "See what you have forgotten." The wind speaks names that sound like virtues people traded for convenience: justice, patience, reverence. And hidden among them, a name you lost the day you learned how to clench your fist. A bell rings in a village where no church remains. It is not metal, but memory ringing, and yet everyone hears. Farmers stop in the field. The flowery hands of the baker hover above the dough. A school teacher drops the chalk. The bell is not warning, it is invitation. The words underneath the sound are simple. Come closer to one another, and you will find me between you, still warm. A man who once loved violence finds a coin in the gutter stamped with a lamb. A woman who stopped praying because the world's news was heavier than her bones finds a feather on her windowsill and feels courageous for the first time in years. Two brothers who have not spoken since the autumn of their father's death meet in a hardware store aisle and, without planning it, buy a ladder together. They call it a coincidence because it hurts to name a miracle aloud. But heaven keeps count with a smile that outlives arithmetic. In a coastal city, the sea pulls back farther than anyone has seen. Boats sit crooked on the sand like exhausted horses. People wander out over the exposed floor. Shells, bottles, the lost keys of nations. And in the silence, they hear their own footsteps, as if amplified by a choir. Some remember tales that warned against following a retreating sea. But the air is gentle and the sky is bright. A child points to the horizon and laughs. "There," she says. "Do you see the line where the water ends and the sky begins?" It is not a line at all, but a seam being stitched with light. The voice returns, now nearer, now like breath upon the face. It says, "The end is not an explosion, but a revelation. The book was always open. You did not know how to read it. The last page is not a cliff, but a door into flame that does not burn. A garden where your name fits the tree, and the tree fits your breath." Do not fear the unmasking. The theater was lovely, yes, but you were invited backstage to meet the author. People argue about omens, blood moons, eclipses, comets, whose tails look like arms, reaching back to touch the wound that made them. They draw charts and make speeches. They sell tickets to panic and maps to nowhere. Prophecy, meanwhile, walks barefoot along the riverbank, picking up sticks and arranging them into the shape of mercy. Prophecy eats with the poor, shares water with the enemy, and leaves flowers on the doorstep of those who do not deserve them. Wherever prophecy goes, clocks slow down and hearts hurry up. A rumor rises. The earth will be shaken, not by wrath only, but by tenderness so vast that granite will weep. Skeptics say granite does not weep, but the mountain has memories older than skepticism. And one morning, a spring opens in its side where no spring was yesterday. People gather with cups. No one pushes. A woman fills the cap of a pen and writes a letter to the son she drove away. And for once, the ink does not smear. In a city of glass, a window refuses to reflect greed. It shows instead a room full of strangers washing one another's feet. A stock ticker turns into a rosary of numbers that mean forgive, forgive, forgive. At a border, a gate hinges on a story told by a grandmother about the day a stranger shared his bread. Soldiers lean their rifles against the memory and listen, and a rook lands on the barrel like punctuation. The world is not naive. It remembers fire. It has watched empires turn into sermons about hubris, watched golden calves collapse into disappointed dust. It has learned that catastrophe is an efficient teacher, but a poor friend. So when a storm gathers in the east and rumors of war walk the headlines like dogs begging at a frightened table, the world breathes and looks for the small lanterns. They appear as they always do, in kitchens, in clinics, on buses at dawn. Hands lift hands. Eyes meet and do not look away. This is how the end begins to be transfigured into the beginning. You dreamed once that a hand reached down from the clouds and plucked the sun like fruit, placing it into a bowl of water. The bowl did not boil. The water hummed a lullaby, and in the reflection you saw a city without sirens. You woke with the taste of peace in your mouth, strange, like a word from a language you once knew as a child. All day, you looked for someone to teach you the grammar of that tongue. At evening, you found a beggar on the steps of a library, and he said, "Begin with thank you. Add I'm sorry. Then say, I will not be afraid to love." Some say a sign will appear in the heavens, a ribbon of light tying east to west, like a promise kept late. Some say the dead will walk, not as terrors, but as teachers who forgot to finish one last lesson. Some say the earth will tilt, and in that tilt, mercy will find the crevices where bitterness hid. All of it might be true in ways language cannot pin. All of it might already be happening in the dark, under your ribs, where a heart that has tolerated too much winter suddenly remembers spring. A market collapses in the morning. By afternoon, neighbors build a table and share soup. A drought turns villages into study halls of compassion. A war exhausts itself on the edge of a prayer and sits down to listen to the wind talk about harvests it has seen. The end has a way of canceling its own arrogance when faced with the stubbornness of hope. Night cannot hold a candle hostage. Flame belongs to morning. You think of judgment and tremble. The voice thinks of healing and sings. You imagine a courtroom. The voice imagines a wedding. You carry chains to prove you are serious about penance. The voice carries keys shaped like laughter. What if the scales are not for punishment, but for balance? What if the fire is not to consume, but to clarify, burning away only the lies you mistook for skin? Stand still, says the voice. Let me name you without the costume of your fear. A fisherman dreams of a net so full it tears, and the fish inside leap back into the sea singing hymns. A teacher forgets her lesson plan and tells the story of a seed that managed to grow in a city made of concrete. A doctor stitches a wound and hums the same tune the teacher's seed used to break stone. In a prison cell, a man writes the names of those he hates, and then, line by line, replaces them with the names of those he has forgiven. The guard finds the list and does not confiscate it. He adds his own name at the bottom and returns the paper through the bars. Midnight arrives and brings a crown of stars too simple for astronomers. They try to calculate, but the numbers become gulls and fly out the window. A meteor crosses the sky, not like a sword, but like a question mark set aflame. People stop on sidewalks, on rooftops, in fields of sleeping corn, and the same thought hovers like a soft-winged moth. I'm seen. I'm seen. Even here, a mother kneels, not in a church, but beside a crib, and says, "Teach me to hope without bargaining." A widower stands at the edge of a lake at dawn and says, "Take what is left of my anger and fold it into the light." A child draws a door on the wall with chalk and says, "Heaven is this color." The chalk breaks. The line is imperfect. He laughs because imperfect lines are where miracles slip through. Panic merchants lose their voices. They go to shout doom and find that their words have turned into invitations to supper. Conspiracies' webs flash in the sun, beautiful and fragile, and a breeze called truth lifts them away like outdated curtains. The economy of fear goes bankrupt. The stock exchange of love opens at dawn without bells, because dawn is its bell. The first trade is breathtakingly simple: despair for bread. The second, judgment for listening. The third, the power to be right for the power to remain human. Distant thunder learns humility. Mountains, so accustomed to being metaphors for difficulty, volunteer to be metaphors for steadfastness. Rivers reconsider the speed at which they forgive. In one city, someone writes on a wall with a marker, "We were not made to devour one another." In another, someone answers below it, "Then let us eat together." By nightfall, tables appear like islands, and across them, people ferry one another's burdens in small, steady boats made of attention. The end, if it must come like a tide, is already full of boats. They do not all look holy. Some are held together by duct tape and jokes. Some were once coffins and are now cradles. A few were altars that decided it was time to go find the sacrifices and bring them home alive. The pilots are not experts. They are the ones who were told they could not, who believed they must, who discovered that humility is an instrument as precise as any scalpel. In the hush that follows this long day, a whisper moves through the vineyards of the lungs and ripens the breath. It says, "Be ready to be surprised by how gentle I am." It says, "Do not mistake my justice for your vengeance, or my mercy for your indulgence." It says, "I will come like a thief only to steal the locks from your doors. The house you fear I will condemn is the house I built to host your joy." Sweep the floors with confession. Set the table with forgiveness. Invite the neighbors whose music kept you awake. I am coming hungry. Night gives way to a pale seam of light on the horizon, and birds begin a chorus they did not rehearse. Factories wake, kitchens bloom, the poor tie their shoes, and the rich untie their pride, knot by knot. Somewhere, a siren sighs and becomes a hymn. Somewhere, a ledger closes and becomes a love letter. Somewhere, a line between enemies refuses to be a line anymore. You ask, "Is this the end?" And the voice replies, "It is the end of the end, which is to say the beginning of the truth about me you suspected, but could not prove. It is the hour when fig trees remember they were made for sweetness. It is the minute when wolves and lambs tell each other stories until they fall asleep at the same river. It is the second when swords hear their true names and become plowshares without regret. Do not fear the shaking. You were not built to be a museum of unbroken glass. You were made a cathedral of living stone, flexible, resonant, capable of holding thunder without cracking. When the bell in your chest tolls, answer it with your life. Let the sound travel through your bones into the ground, so even roots will know. This creature chose love when it mattered. If there must be a sign in the sky, let it be this: a thin, unwavering band of light drawn from east to west by the finger that first wrote on water. Children will point, scholars will quote, the grieving will lift their faces and find that the air tastes like bread just broken. And even those who hide will feel a warmth under the door and decide, for once, to unlock it. When the great unveiling comes, it will not strip you. It will clothe you in names you forgot you had earned. Peacemaker, listener, restorer of ruins, keeper of small fires, friend of enemies, witness of dawn. You will wear them lightly, as if they were always your size. And the world will see you and think, the end did not devour us. It revealed us. Hold your breath one last time before you remember. You do not need to hold it anymore. Let it go. Let it rise like incense from the chapel of your lungs, invisible and fragrant. What was promised arrives not with sirens, but with sandals. Footsteps on the garden path, a knock that sounds like home. The door opens from the other side, and a laugh like summer walks in. The garden breathes again. Every leaf carries a memory of storm, yet none of them resent the rain. Morning stands at the threshold like a guest unsure whether to knock, and the earth, still trembling from so many centuries of forgetting, whispers, "Come in." The light that enters has no color. It gathers colors as it travels. Amber from forgiveness, blue from patience, green from mercy newly learned. It settles over rooftops and ruins alike, over cities that have repented and villages that never knew they had sinned. Nothing is excluded. Even the dust is invited to shine. From the ruins of walls, voices rise, soft, uncertain, human. They do not chant doctrine, they hum names. Each name is a seed. Each seed finds soil in the heart of another. This is how the new language begins, not by decree, but by echo. The voice that once thundered now speaks almost shyly, as if reluctant to wake those who have finally begun to dream in peace. It says, "I have never left you. You measured distance and suffering, but I was in every step you took through the valley of your own making. Even when you called the darkness mine, I was the candle behind your ribs, waiting for permission to breathe." People begin to notice small mercies behaving like constellations. Two strangers reach for the same loaf at a market and share it without negotiation. A mechanic fixes a rival's truck. A politician forgets the script of fear mid-speech and begins to cry. No one records it. The world is learning privacy again, the sacred kind that shelters goodness until it can walk on its own. Mountains no longer sermonize, they listen. Rivers remember lullabies. Animals look at humans without accusation, and humans look back without shame. Every creature carries the scent of reprieve. Someone asks, "Where is the city called heaven?" Another answers, "Wherever gratitude builds a roof." In the middle of what used to be war, a single olive tree stands. Its trunk is twisted, its bark scarred by bullets long since turned to dust. From its branches hang hundreds of ribbons, scraps of uniforms, hospital gauze, silk from wedding veils. Wind moves through them, reading the prayers out loud. They sound like breathing. Children gather the ashes of old libraries and mix them with water to make ink. They write on stones, on shells, on the backs of their hands. We remember. We begin. We are not afraid to be kind. The moon, once a mirror for loneliness, now reflects belonging. Tides keep their rhythm, but lose their anger. Sailors navigate not by stars, but by forgiveness. They say it glows brighter. In a northern valley, snow falls for the first time in a decade. Each flake lands like a benediction on roofs that once hid fear. People lift their faces to the cold and realize that purity is not sterility. It is softness that survives. The prophets, those unnamed voices that once shook kingdoms, have grown quiet. Their silence is not absence, but completion. They stand at the edges of dreams like shepherds, watching lambs finally unafraid of open fields. Time itself relaxes. It stretches like fabric rinsed clean. Minutes no longer compete, they link hands. History, that old accountant, closes its ledger and learns to dance. And still, the whisper continues, weaving through sleep and work, through laughter and mourning. You are my image even in your ruins. I am your origin even in your dust. Together, we become what was always promised. A pilgrim walking along the coast stops where the sea meets the land in perfect balance, neither surrendering, neither conquering. He plants a stick in the sand, ties to it a strip of cloth torn from his old cloak, and leaves it fluttering. He does not call it a flag, he calls it a reminder. On it, he has written only 3 words, "Still we rise." Night falls again, gentle, unashamed of its own depth. Stars return, not as warnings, but as witnesses. Each pulse of light is a heartbeat shared across infinity. Some scientists will chart it, others will pray to it, and some will simply watch until their eyes fill with the same brightness. In the heart of the great silence, the voice speaks once more, almost human now. Do you see how even ending can bloom? Do you see that the world I made was never about survival, but about trust? What you call doom was the sound of seeds cracking open. The seas, hearing this, sigh like choirs exhaling amen. Mountains echo it softly, not to impress, but to agree. Every echo finds a pulse inside humanity, and for the first time since the first word, the pulse answers back. Yes. Cities illuminate not with electricity but with stories. Each window tells one. Here, a family reunited after decades of silence. There, a nurse lighting a candle for the nameless dead. In another, two lovers old as winter rediscover the courage to dance barefoot on the balcony. None of these things are newsworthy. All of them are salvation. Someone writes a hymn without words. It begins as wind through wheat, becomes footsteps on stairs, then laughter in a stairwell, then the hush before saying, "I love you." That hush spreads faster than any plague once did, inoculating the world with tenderness. Soon, nobody remembers what they were supposed to fear. They remember, instead, the sound of a knock that turned out to be invitation. They remember that the divine was never a visitor, but a resident patient enough to wait for welcome. And so, the prophecy completes itself, not with fire, but with warmth. Not with collapse, but with comprehension. The heavens do not split. They open like eyes finally waking. The earth does not vanish, it exhales. From horizon to horizon stretches a simple command carved into light. Live gently. The command needs no enforcement. It fulfills itself in motion, hands planting, hearts forgiving, mouths singing names instead of numbers. Every act of care becomes liturgy. Every breath, prayer. If you listen closely now, you can still hear the faint tremor of that first voice, the one that breathed the world awake. I am here. I was always here. And so are you. The wind carries this refrain across oceans and over sleeping continents until even the most skeptical dawn accepts it. And when the last echo fades, what remains is not aftermath, but beginning. The beginning of a world that understands prophecy not as threat, but as invitation. A world that kneels not out of fear, but out of awe. A world that, having tasted its own end, finally hungers for grace. And grace, smiling like morning, answers.